Welcome to Mikab Model College online tutorial. We hope at the end of this lesson you will have acquired the expected learning outcome. Sit down and listen attentively as we introduce.
Hello students, I remain Ibrahim Samson, your biology teacher. Welcome to another segment of a class. Today, remember, in the previous class we introduced ourselves to the kingdom Plantae, and we discussed some of the characteristics of what? The phylum that is called Chlorophyta. So today we shall be going into another phylum that is known as BRYOPHYTA. So let's go. We said it before that this phylum called bryophytes, they include organisms such as what? The mosses, the liverworts, the hornworts. These organisms are considered as aquatic plants. In fact, this is where we are introducing ourselves to the first group of plants that are actually living, some of them on land. Now let's take a look at it, the characteristics generally. This is the first set of complex green plants that exist at the tissue level of organization. The previous ones we have seen, they are existing at the cellular level, even though some of them are multicellular while some are unicellular. But this particular phylum known as BRYOPHYTA welcomes us into the first group of green plants that exist at the level, the tissue level of organization. Then these plants do not have vascular tissue. And when we say vascular tissue, what do we mean? So you may want to think of some parts of a plant that we call the parenchyma, the xylem, the phloem, the cambium layer, the collenchyma, and then the rest of them. Then these plants also have structures that look like roots, stem, and leaves. However, those things are not true stem leaves. So the difference between this one and the others is that they are multicellular, just like the others, but they are existing at the tissue level of organization, unlike the previous ones that we said they exist at the cellular level. Now, these organisms are also terrestrial, but we still have some of them that are aquatic or living in a moist places. Then their own mode of reproduction is by means of gametes, which is the sexual reproduction, while some of them that have spores, when they release those spores, they use the spores to carry out the asexual means of reproduction, and they also have alternation of life. Then they have chlorophyll. Since they are plants, they have chlorophyll that they use in carrying out photosynthesis. Some of the examples are the ones we have mentioned before, the Mercantia species, the one we call liverworts. We have the Funaria hygrometrica, that is the most plant. These organisms are even referred to as the amphibian plant kingdom. You know, amphibians actually carry out their reproduction in an aquatic environment. So when we have a group of plants that carry out that need water or carry out their reproduction in an aquatic environment, you call it aquatic plant. They are called aquatic plant kingdom, or the amphibian plant kingdom actually. So that will bring us to see a picture of what a moss plant, which is an example of bryophyte, actually looks like. So this is the capsule. This capsule bears the spores that they use in carrying out what? A sexual reproduction. So then we have what we call the seta. Instead of what? Stem, we call it seta. Then those things are the leaves. Yes, they are the leaves. And then in the case of root, we have them to be what? Rhizoids. This is a good example of bryophyte, which is what? Liverwort. This is how they look like. They too have what you call rhizoid in as their stem, as their root. Then we have the seta, and then we also have the capsule that bears the spores. So that is all about the kingdom, the phylum that we call what? Yes, the phylum BRYOPHYTA. So now let's quickly take a look at the other phyla we have. Remember I told you this phylum, this kingdom are having three phyla. The thallophyte, the bryophyte, and then the tracheophyte. So, but the tracheophyte is subdivided into two, which is pteridophyte and spermatophyte. So the first one we have there are the pteridophyte. These are the ferns. And here we have the characteristics. They are the first set of vascular plants. Do you remember that in the previous class we said bryophytes do not have vascular tissues? But now, as we come into the group, the phylum that is called Pteridophyta, we are being introduced to plants with vascular tissues. That is the reason, in fact, why they are called tracheophyte, because tracheo there stands for what, or means vascular. Then they are the non-flowering plants. They are the non-flowering plants. These ones, they have standby roots that we call true root. They have true stem and they have true leaves. Then, since we said they are vascular plants, that means we should expect them to have xylem and phloem for the transport of material. So, but their stem is a rhizome. Then they reproduce by means of sexual reproduction, a reproductive organ that is called prothallus. And there's a sexual reproduction is by means of what we call soros. These organisms are majorly terrestrial. Only a few of them are actually aquatic. So, now let's go. We have examples such as the Dryopteris, then Cyclosaurus, Platycerium, and the Phematodes. All of these ones are actually terrestrial. But in the case of the aquatic ones, we have the Nephrolepis, the Azola, and then Savinia oblongata. So this brings us to the end of the characteristics of the subphylum that is called Pteridophyta. Now let's take a look at the spermatophyte. These ones are vascular plants with true root, stem, and leaves, and they are flowering plants as well. Their leaves are small, they are scaly, and they are needle-like. So their seeds are naked, that is the gymnosperm, because spermatophyta are grouped into two, angiosperm and gymnosperm. So we are talking about the gymnosperm now. So they have kind of scaly and needle-like leaves. Their seeds are naked because they do not have what we call ovary, and they do not bear fruit as well. These plants are also non-flowering. Yes, because they are non-flowering, that is why we do not expect them to have what? Ovary. And that is part of the reason why their seeds are actually born naked. Then they do not undergo pollination since they are non-flowering plants. Where do they now put their seeds? Their seeds are naked, but they burn them or they bear them in what we call cones. And examples of these organisms are the conifers, the ginkgos, the pines, and then the cycads. Now let's take a look at the flowering group of spermatophyta, which are called angiospermic or angiospermatophyte. These ones bear enclosed seed. Unlike the previous one that bear naked seed, these ones actually bear enclosed seed because they are having ovary. They are flowering plants, and they also carry out pollination. They have more specialized reproductive mechanism, which is called pollination and fertilization, as contrary to the first one that we actually mentioned, which is the gymnosperm. Then, they are the most complex green flowering plants in nature. They also have well-developed vascular bundles, which include the xylem, the phloem, the parenchyma, the cambium layer, and all of that. So, the rest. So, angiosperm is also subdivided into what we call monocotyledon, or you just call it monocot, and dicotyledon. The seeds of monocot plants, they just have one seed leaf. An example is a maize or a rice plant. While in the case of dicot, they have what we call two seed leaves. So you can think of examples like the melon, the beans, the granules, cashew, and so many other examples like that. So, angiosperms or the angiospermatophyte, they have four major parts. Four major parts. What are these parts? The flower, the leaves, the stem, and then the root. So these are the characteristics of the kingdom, the group that is called Angiospermae or Angiospermatophyte. So this will bring us to the end of today's class. Remember, today we have taken a look at the characteristics of the kingdom that we call tracheophyte, which is subdivided into two subphylum of what? Gymnosperm and Angiosperm. So these organisms actually have their own characteristics that they use in differing from one from the other. So some are flowering while some are not non-flowering. Some bear naked seed, some do not bear naked seed. They bear enclosed seed. Those ones are called angiosperm. Those ones that bear naked seed are called gymnosperm. So in our next class, we are done with plants already. So we will be taking a look at the characteristics of animals, where we are going to learn about 9 phyla of animals. Until then, get yourself prepared and watch out.